विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ So epistemology, which is a branch of, which is one of the branch of philosophy. So any philosophy, whenever you want to study, one has to start with the pramana vichara. One has to start with, because philosophy gives you knowledge. Knowledge, depends upon how many pramanas you accept. Knowledge always depends upon the means of knowledge. And so, how many pramanas, how many means of knowledge you accept, etc. And why you don't accept other pramanas, etc. All this is there. And anyway, so we are discussing, we started with the Nayayikas because we generally feel they are gurus in determining several things. And so Nayayikas definitely talked about Pratyaksha, we have seen that, and Anumana also, definitely. In fact, especially Vedantins depend upon, Vedantis learn rather, logic from Nayayikas. Vedantins learn textual interpretation called Mimamsa from Mimamsakas. Vedanti learns logic from Nayayikas and learn Mimamsa textual interpretation from Mimamsakas. So this is how Tarka and Mimamsa, very important even in the Vedanta also. All the time we interpret. Any mantra you open, you have to interpret properly. You cannot just take literally. Literally it sometimes doesn't make a sense, or it may contradict with something else. Very, very serious thing it is. Whole thing, because it's ultimately Veda. So you just can't, being a Vedantin, which you definitely accept it as a pramana, and therefore you just can't reject it also. Well, then if you don't interpret properly, you cannot understand it also. If you don't understand, you won't get any advantage also. So ultimately, textual interpretation also, we don't have tools. We basically depend upon Mimamsakas. They are heavily, they are very serious, they are very committed to textual interpretation. Because they say the entire Veda actually, which is called text, so has to be interpreted properly. And so they have evolved several methods also for that. Anyway, so greatest service is done by Nayayika when he formulated the condition, and finally he has highlighted Tatparya. I am talking about Shabda Pramana now. So finally he has highlighted this Tatparya, the purport, in order to construe the meaning. The purport is always purport always depends upon the person, intention of the speaker, Vivaksha. What is the intention of the speaker will be the purport of the whole section. And here intention of the speaker means the Upanishad. So that is to be understood. And we are seeing that in a Shabda Pramana, means the Shabda ultimately gives rise to a sentence which is definitely a group of words, etc. And in order to construe a sentence, or even in order to form a sentence, a meaningful sentence, you require 4 conditions. That also is. So akanksha, yogyata, sannidhi and tatparya. And while discussing tatparya, purport, I gave you the chart of this upakrama, upasamhara, abhyasa, purvata, phalam, upapatti, etc. by taking an example of a Chandogya, that how we arrive at the intention of the speaker called Upanishad. Upanishad will not speak as such, like I am speaking to you. Otherwise, you can definitely ask me, what is your intention, Swamiji? Please convey. But here you cannot ask. So you have to arrive at. So there are lingas. There are certain indicators by which you understand the vivaksha, the intention of the speaker. And so that also we did. So how to arrive at the purport of the Upanishad. Tatparya also is very important in order to construe a sentence. So, and after that, so there are 3, in a textual interpretation, basically 3 things are important. First is this Tatparya, purport of the sentence. Second is the context in which the text is there. And so, like, we have this text called Mahavakya in several places, not just 4 Mahavakyas, several Mahavakyas are there. So first wherever the Mahavakya is, first you take into account the context in which this text called Mahavakya occurs. And otherwise, interpretation will go wrong. Especially Tattvamasi is another thing, but there is another Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi, was interpreted wrongly by other people. In a Shaiva Siddhanta, there is a text called Sankalpa Nirakaranam. That's a name of a text, title, where author refutes this Vedantin. He is under Vedanta means this Vedanta, Advait Vedantin. But they say that is only Vedantin. Vedanta means, even I have told you, Madhvas also are Vedantins, Ramanuja's followers are Vedantins, Vallabhacharya's followers are also Vedantin. But anyway, here they mean Vedanta means this Advaita Vedanta. And so he refutes the principles of Advaita Vedanta. So every principle in Advaita Vedanta, he calls it as a Sankalpa. And Sankalpa Nirakaranam, refutation of the principles of Advaita Vedanta. And he quotes this Mahavakya, that Aham Brahmasmi, right? And that's the text. He has to interpret properly. But instead he said, look at this, look at the egoism of this Advaiti. He is interpreting this Mahavakya as, by Advaiti, brings out his ego by interpreting that I am Brahman. Mahavakya, he interprets, Vedanta interprets that I am Brahman, by which he definitely brings out his own ego. Now, this author called Umapati Shivacharya of this text called Sankalpa Nirakaranam. They have a lot of knowledge. Textual knowledge is there. But he failed to see the Tatparya, the purport of the intention of the speaker called Upanishad, basically. So, here at the Tatparya, I am Brahman means not just I means which I refer as in a Vyavahara. Not in a Vyavahara, that is Jiva. That is not equated with the Ishvara or Brahman. So, there is no question of an ego. That has to be a Lakshana, etc. has to be taken. So, Tatparya of Upanishad has to be understood properly, which he has failed. Which we know now. What is the Tatparya? Through Shadlinga. That basically, so second thing, first thing in a proper textual interpretation, the first thing is a Tatparya, you have to understand the intention. Second thing is a context in which that particular text occurs, which you want to interpret. And third thing is even though basically even though a text also you understand, the context you understand, Tatparya but still what the tradition says for the meaning of the text, that is to be taken into account. That's the third thing. So 3 things are very important. So, and otherwise it will be a problem. Like even the Vishishtadvaitin also, like you know the text, Yato Vacho Nivartante Aprapya Manasa Saha, that is in Taittiriya Upanishad. That text is there. Now it is simple. Yato Vacho Nivartante Aprapya means the words and the mind, basically, generally which reveal an object. Words reveal an object. Any word reveals its meaning. and even the mind also, well, reveal a object. So basically, yatovacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha shows that this Brahman, well, is not available for objectification either through the words or through the mind. So, well, not available. That's the way of basically revealing the nature of Brahman. That it is not an object. It's in form of a subject. In fact, Brahman is one which is because of which only the mind functions and able to objectify everything else. And even the speech, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasa, says that. But anyway, so Vishishta Advaitin, how do they interpret this text? You see, they say, well, this mind reached the highest reality called Brahman, Lord, Narayana, and try to enumerate the qualities of the Lord. And well, they find that it is not possible, and therefore they nivartante, they came back. So this is how they interpret. You can understand now. So basically, because they say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, so well, Ananta Kalyana Gunagana Nilayaha. Narayana has Ananta Kalyana Gunas. And then mind and words will try to basically enumerate them. And they could not enumerate because they are infinite virtues of a Lord. And so they written. So we call this as a dosha. If you don't interpret properly, it is called Shrutahani Ashruta Kalpana. Shrutahani means, well, what has been really told by the Shruti, the intention, has not been understood properly. And Ashruta Kalpana, which is not really an intention of the Tatparya of the Shruti, that kind of a Kalpana you do. So this is I'm just giving you a few examples. That is how, so these three things are important. In Sampradaya also is very important, even though you know the context and you can interpret the text. You know the Tatparya of the text also. Yet you should always go by the tradition, what it says for this text. So don't say that I am going to interpret it my own way. Shankaracharya ji says in chapter 13, in Bhagavad Gita, this in Bhashyam, verse 30, he says that Asampradayavit murkhavat api upekshaniya. Asampradayavit means one who does not follow the tradition. So far as textual interpretation is concerned, murkhavat, you like a fool. How you ignore a fool, knowing that he is a fool. Same way you have to ignore such a person who does not follow tradition. So he may be a scholar. So there are so many scholars in Sanskrit and in Vedanta and all that. But they do not follow the Sampradaya. Then definitely you should not go by their textual interpretation. And because the Vedic text, with its meaning, through Sampradaya is coming down generation after generation, millennia in fact. And it is a time-tested thing. So it has traveled a long way basically. And so whenever we want to understand the meaning of the text, so they call, in the philosophy, they call it, there is something called pre-understanding. Pre-understand means with empty mind, well, you cannot understand that, especially Vedic text, Upanishad. So generally, and therefore, a certain pre-understanding is required. And a pre-understanding is basically, it's nothing but I should have an understanding which goes in tune with the Sampradaya. I will tell you, like you and me, whenever you hear even a Kathopanishad, while revealing the nature of Atma, it says, Duratsu dure tadu antikeche. This Atma or Brahman is farther than the farthest, and it is nearer than the nearest. Now, if I don't have a certain pre-understanding that how a Sampradaya interprets this thing, while you will not understand the nature of Brahman language. You may feel it is a contradictory also. And therefore, a certain pre-understanding is required in order to interpret the text. And that pre-understanding is always in tune with a Sampradaya. That is how our Acharyas, you see. Not that, suppose a Bhashyam is not there, still all Acharyas are able to take any Prakarana Grantha and all that. Still they are in tune with the Sampradaya. That's called pre-understanding. Otherwise, you interpret in your own way and the textual interpretation can be wrong and you will be fraught with two doshas. Shrutahani, what really Shruti wants to convey, you have really, I mean, destroyed. And Ashuta Kalpana, which Shruti does not want to say, that kind of a meaning you imagine. So that so this is a so these are the things. So basically, what is needed is basically a fusion of or a blend of two horizons. One is a horizon of a text, and other is my own horizon with a pre-understanding, and there should be a blend between them. Then it will be profitable to the person, not to the text. It will be profitable to the person who studies the text. So he identifies with the text, message conveyed by the text, and this is our tradition. Has followed also. So this is called what we call as a Shrutyartha Vichara, interpretation of the text called Upanishad, etc. While in modern language they call it as a hermeneutics. That's same thing, but they have given this a new name. It's as old as Vedic text. They call hermeneutics is a new branch. It started in 18th century. Started with the interpretation of the Bible, and before that this branch of science was not there. It's not. It is as old as Vedic text, because Sampradaya is as old as Veda, and therefore, and therefore we always say the old is able to sit with the new. So this generally old generation cannot sit with the new generation, but our old generation is able to sit with the new. Only the names have changed. Certain terminology. They may have their own terminology, etc. So we say Akanksha, Yogyata, Sannidhi, and Tatparya, and right? We said that. So they say syntax and semantics and pragmatics and like that. So they brought a new words, coined new words. So we feel, oh, this is something different. It's all we have since the ageless time. What I am saying is we should be proud of a Indian tradition. You can understand. And unfortunately, many of our things have been borrowed here and published on their own name, which our Rajiv Malhotra is, bringing out all these things. He is really bringing out everything, that how these things are really borrowed from India, and they put their own stamp and give to the world as that novelty or something. So this is what I am saying was Mimamsakas are our guru so far as Mimamsa is concerned, textual interpretation is concerned, and for a Tarka, well, Naiyayikas are our guru. For logic, they are our guru. Why, Swamiji, Naiyayikas are not concerned about textual interpretation? No. Even though they have given this, how to form a sentence and how to construe a meaning of the sentence, Akanksha, Yogyata, etc. They have given, that's true. But they themselves are not committed to textual interpretation. They are committed to their own logic. If what is in concurrence with their logic, any text which is in concurrence with the logic, that text they accept from the Veda. If it is not in concurrence with their own logic, well, they don't. So they hardly give a total weight. They don't give a total weightage to the text. So therefore, they are not much worried about textual interpretations. But Mimamsakas, basically, they are totally committed to Veda. And therefore, so they have evolved the method we call Mimamsa. You must have heard this word. Anyway, even though textual interpretations for that we are depend upon Mimamsakas, but several places we may disagree with them. We have disagreed with them. And I am giving one example where Shankaracharya ji differed from Mimamsaka's view in 4th Sutra. Several places in Naishkarmya Siddhi Sureshwaracharya ji, in a Bhagavad Gita Bhashyam we will find Bhashyakara has said this karma cannot be able to give you moksha, etc. Karma Jnana Samuchaya also we cannot give you. He writes a long Bhashyam. So basically what Mimamsaka means they say karma gives a moksha. So we don't go totally by that. Even though for interpretation of the Vedic text, we definitely borrow the tools from them. But we don't agree everywhere what the Veda says that it is, what they say, that is the interpretation of the Vedic text. No. And so Shankaracharya ji differs in 4th Sutra, Tattva Samanvaya. he has talked a long, I mean, he has talked a lot of things against these Mimamsakas who talk about this, that karma is a means of moksha, etc. Anyway, so hermeneutics is not new, phenomenology is also not new, I have talked about it. Terms may be new, so basically old can sit with the new, comfortably with the new. Anyway, so Nayayika says in constructing a sentence, basically take care of akanksha, yogyata, sannidhi and tatparya. Anyway, and then as I told you that our tradition basically, I mean, a method of interpretation, in that our tradition has evolved a method of interpretation, and that interpretation, of course, is not arbitrary. Still, there are many ways of interpreting, and all Vedantic schools basically refer to the same text, same mantra of Upanishad, and still they have found a difference of opinions in that. So basically they depend upon same text, but they give different interpretations depending upon their own tradition they belong to. And that is how interpretation given by us is right and others' interpretation is a wrong interpretation. And that is true. Like when when we look at their interpretation, basically we look at it as outside, like Ramanuja's interpretation. So when someone belongs to Ramanuja's school, basically looks at my interpretation, they say it is wrong. It is outside. Anyway, and basically this, especially even in a given school also there are some great minds, of course, but they give a different interpretation. There was one Acharya who was written. I mean, in Vedanta there are Prakarana Granthas. I will just briefly mention about Upanishads and Prakarana Grantha. There is a big difference, very big difference. So many people ask this question that why Acharya has to write a text when Upanishads are there, Brahma Sutra is there, Bhagavad Gita is there. Why they have to write a new text, Vedantic text called Prakarana Grantha, treatise we call. Why they should write? And several Aparokshanabhuti in these and Panchadashi, so many are there. Why they should write? In fact, it is required. Because in an Upanishad, you will not find a systematic development of a topic. You will never find. In Bhagavad Gita, you don't find. This is, I should not say like that, but it is true. Bhagavan just mentions something about Karma Yoga and then again mentions something about a Jnani. He just starts glorification of a Jnani. And I mean, here and there. Things are not like, just see a Tattva Bodha and see a Bhagavad Gita, where you will find a systematic development of topics. Whatever our principles are there, those principles are dealt properly, systematically in a section wise, I mean, in all Prakarana Granthas. And that is why Acharyas actually have found a need for this Prakarana Grantha in order to make you understand all the principles of Vedanta properly and systematically also. Anyway, so this is the thing, need of a Prakarana Grantha. In Prakarana Grantha, some of the Prakarana Granthas are introductory, Atma Bodha and Viveka Chudamani and all. And so, what is that? Sarva Vedanta, Siddhanta, Sara Sangra, etc. So, all these are introductory. There are certain Prakarana Granthas which are called advanced text. They are called Siddhi Granthas. So, in the title you will always find a word Siddhi at the end. So, like Advaita Siddhi written by Madhusudan Saraswati and Brahma Siddhi written by one Mandan Mishra. Not Mandan Mishra who has become Sureshwaracharya. That's a different one. There was another Mandan Mishra, but history is not known from where he hailed and etc. Nobody knows much. But he has written Brahma Siddhi. And then Ishta Siddhi is there, and then Naishkarna Siddhi, written by Sureshwaracharya. That's the latest edition, latest I should say. All these are even previous, before that. Anyway, so certain Siddhi Granthas we call advanced text, called Prauda Granthas also sometimes. And so, in one of the text called this author called Mandan Mishra, who has written this Brahma Siddhi, he's a Vedantin, but he gives a different interpretation of Ishavasya Upanishad mantra. I'm just giving you certain examples of a textual interpretation, how they differ. Vidyancha avidyancha yastad vedo bhayam saha avidya mrityum tirtva vidya amritamashnute. That was a mantra in Ishavasya. So Shankaracharya's interpretation is very, very clear. And for the same text, this Mandanacharya, let us say, has given this different interpretation. He says avidya has a good phase and bad phase also. How come avidya has a good and bad phase? That Acharya knows, we don't know. But this is what I am saying. In modern times, Aurobindo, basically, Sri Aurobindo, the great master, he started his commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad. And he calls it Ishavasya Upanishad as an ancient Vedanta. He started his elaborate commentary basically on Ishavasya Upanishad, and that commentary he calls it as a life divine. And subsequently he wrote a big book, very magnum book, and several volumes also, called Life Divine. That is his fundamental work, which gives an account of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. And Aurobindo was dissatisfied with Shankaracharya's interpretation, Bhashya, on Ishavasya Upanishad. In one context, he said Ishvara laughed at Shankaracharya on 3 occasions. The first occasion is when Acharya took that Digvijay Yatra. So Acharya took that Bharat Parikrama, etc., from one place to another place. Then Ishvara said, why this Jnana Yogi should, move from place to place, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, right? Why should he move at all? And back again from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and all that thrice. So Ishvara felt very surprising that he is a Jnana Yogi. He is not a Karma Yogi that he keeps on moving here and there. And so he looked strange to Ishvara, and Ishvara laughed. That's one occasion. This is what Aurobindo writes. Second occasion, when Ishvara laughed at Shankaracharya, when he started writing commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad. So because according to Sri Aurobindo, entire Ishavasya Upanishad goes against the spirit of Advaita Vedanta. Starting from the first mantra, Ishavasya Vidam Sarum Yatkincheti Jagatyam Jagat. Starting from the first mantra, whole Ishavasya is going against the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. And Shankaracharya writes the entire commentary interpreting the whole text, all the mantras of Ishavasya on the basis of Advaita philosophy. And therefore, basically, Ishvara said, I have not revealed this Ishavasya Upanishad for this Advaita philosophy. And this Acharya writes commentary based on Advaita philosophy. So he made a joke of him. And so Ishvara laughed. This is the second occasion. Third occasion is when Acharya was a sannyasi. So any connection with the previous ashrama is not there, naturally. It has gone now. And therefore he is a varnashramatita. And when Shankaracharya heard that his mother was in almost the last stage of her life, he rushed to Kaladi. And because permission of sannyasa was given on assurance from the mother, on assurance by the Shankaracharya that he will be back with her at the last moments. And then she passed away, and then he performed the obsequies and this cremation, etc. These Namundris don't do that kind of a thing, yet he did, and he was a sannyasi also, and only son. So he was entitled to do, but he is sannyasi, he is varnashram atita. And so Ishvara literally laughed that seeing such a sannyasi. And so this is what 3 occasions on Aurobindo writes that Ishvara laughed at Shankaracharya. So there are ancient, classical, modern interpretations. Modern interpretation, Aurobindo's interpretation. He was not an ordinary figure. He relies more on the mantra portion of the Veda. He says Veda means only mantra. mantra portion. This Brahmana, Aranyaka, no, that's all later addition. Because ultimately Brahmana is an explanation, Brahmana Aranyaka is an explanation of the mantra portion. That's true. That's true also. And therefore that is not an original Veda. Original Veda means a mantra portion, mantra section. So he relies more on a mantra portion of the Veda. And he has given his own mystical interpretation on the mantra portion of the Veda. He has got good following, etc. Great scholars, mystics also follow him. And he does not accept Sayanacharya's interpretation of the mantra portion. Sayanacharya has written a bhashyam on entire Veda. One Shabar Swami has written bhashyam on the sutras, Mimamsa sutras, like our Brahma Sutra, Dharma Sutras, Mimamsa sutras are there. Shabar Swami has written on that, called Shabar Bhashyam. But on entire Veda, bhashyam has been written by great Acharya called Sayanacharya. I think he was almost, I'm sure, he was a elder brother of a Vidyaranya. Almost, if I am not wrong. He was the elder brother of a Vidyaranya who has written a bhashyam on entire Veda. And Aurobindo says, well, I will not accept his bhashyam on a mantra portion. I will write my own interpretation. And he gave his own interpretation. We go by Sayanacharya's bhashya. And but Aurobindo says Sayanacharya's interpretation is only from one perspective. He does not take care of others' views, etc. etc. So anyway, this is Aurobindo. Anyway, now regarding this, when textual interpretation has come, you will find two types of statements in Upanishad. Both are basically revealing the nature of Brahman. But one type of sentences reveal the nature of Brahman through negation, like neti neti, etc. Other types of sentences are reveal the nature of Brahman in an affirmative way, like Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, etc. And in Mundaka you find some all negation, Adreshyam, Agrahyam, Achakshushrotram, Tadaparanipadam, etc., etc., Agotram, etc., all. So, even in Akshara Brahmana in Brihadaranyaka also, where I said that it's the longest definition of Atma, right? Asthulam, Ananuhu, Arasvam, Adirgam, Achayam, Alohitam, Anakasham, Avayuhu, etc., etc., etc. So big. It's also negation. Asthulam. It's not Sthula. Atma is not a Sthula, Atma is not Sukshma, Atma is not Dirgha, Atma is not Rasva. So negation. So there are two types of statements you find in Upanishad. Both reveal the nature of Brahman or Atma, but one in a negative way, other is in affirmative way. And here also the difference of opinions are there. It's we generally say that definitely, because regarding Atma there is already certain opinions. I'm here because Atma is self-revealing and self-conscious, and therefore there happens to be the self-judgment. But the self-judgment is basically a self-error, because there is a ignorance of the self. So your judgment about yourself is nothing but an error. So already there is a self-error, and therefore you need not have to basically say affirmatively Atma is like this. Whatever opinions one really holds are negated basically, and Atma is revealed as it is then. So basically we give importance to negative statements, but there are in a tradition there are teachers who say no, affirmative sentences are more important than negative sentences. It's just by the way I'm mentioning, because we are talking about textual interpretations. Now this Mandanacharya, which I talked to you, who has written this Brahma Siddhi, he says there is no Jivan Mukti. Based on textual interpretation I'm saying. And that mantra fortunately we have seen before not long. So in Mundaka. So we have seen Kshiyante Chasya Karmani Tasmin Drishte Paravare. He quotes that mantra and says that there is no Jivan Mukti. He says Kshiyante Cha Asya Karmani. I am giving you a flare of these things, So we go by our Bhashyam and go by Pujya Swamiji, but there are all the things are lying here and there. So Asya Karmani kshiyante, asya, jnaninaha, of this person who is a wise person, karmani. So he says, look, it's a plural. Plural means what? Prarabdha, Sanchita and Agami, everything you have to include. So, and therefore, Sanchita will all go away with the knowledge. Well, we understood, because now he is no more a karta. With Jnanam, well, he is no more a karta, means Agami also will not be there. We can understand, but Prarabdha will be there. So, when Kshiyante, so all the karmas will go away. But then, definitely he is free. So then, his prarabdha is still there, and and that will be there till that momentum is there. Finally, when momentum also goes away of a prarabdha, then definitely will stops, and therefore prarabdha goes by experience of pleasure and pain. And if pleasure and pain is there to the person, definitely how can you call it as a wise person? And therefore, this Mandanacharya says Jivan Mukti is not possible. Then we say, what about this Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavan talks about that a wise person who is alive, right? He talks about Yanisha Sarva Bhutanam and so many things. Yeah, everywhere. And even Arjuna asks Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha? Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha, and etc. How he lives and how he talks and how. Means he is living. He is living and he is talking and he is eating and everything. And then you say, wise person, the mukti is not possible, Jivan Mukta is not there. How will you say, how will you interpret this Sthita Prajna action and all these things? Well, Mandana says, Sthita Prajna is a sadhaka, not a siddha. You and I are on the first step of the ladder, and Sthita Prajna is on the last step of the ladder. And he can look back and on the ladder and says, oh guys, you follow me. And so basically, so trace of avidya is there. They call it as avidya lesha. Avidya lesha is there, because of which he is not free. When prarabdha goes away, his body falls, then he becomes free. So this is how he gives. Then ultimately reconcile with the Jivan Mukti also. Chandogya Upanishad says, Tasya tavadeva chiram yavanna vimokshe atha sampatsya, etc. etc. That is that much delay actually, so far as his body is there, that much delay to his mukti is there, etc. But so Jivan Mukti is there, Videha Mukti will be there, which is just a byproduct actually. And so anyway, what I am saying is, so there are several, in a given school, Advaita Vedanta itself, there are acharyas who interpret the text little differently. Principally everything is same. Jiva is Brahman, etc. For that there is no second opinion. But regarding other matters, this kind of things are there. Anyway, and I think I would like to stop here, because a new topic will begin, and that topic will take time. Also, there will be now big gap between this class and the next class, because next class would be in on the 4th week of August, it seems, because now all this one after another, all camps are there. Yesterday only I saw all this, and so I said after 21st August, etc. But it is it's not possible perhaps, and therefore a long gap is coming. So that now new topic I would like to start in the next section, next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.